My name is Staff Sergeant Michael Reeve, serial number. It doesn't matter anymore. For 12 years, I've kept my mouth shut. I signed the papers. I took the money. I watched them bury the truth under layers of classification so deep that even senators don't have clearance. But I'm done lying. Not because I'm brave. I'm not. I'm doing this because every night for 12 years, I've heard them screaming through the ice. And last week, I saw one of their faces in my bathroom mirror. You need to understand something. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not looking for attention. I don't want your sympathy. I want you to know what's coming. Because whatever we found under that ice, it's still there. And it's waking up. The therapy sessions never worked. 3 different VA psychiatrists, all telling me it was PTSD, survivor's guilt, delayed combat stress. They gave me pills that turned my thoughts into fog, but couldn't silence the sounds, the clicking, the whispering, the wet, organic breathing that doesn't belong to anything human. My wife left after 2 years, said I wasn't the same man who deployed. She was right. The man who flew to the Arctic in 2013 died up there. What came back was just his face. There were 4 of us who made it out, 4 survivors out of 15 Marines. We had an unofficial pact, never speak about it, not even to each other. Corporal Jenkins broke first. They found him in his apartment in 2015, sitting in a bathtub full of ice water, every light in the place on. The coroner said, hypothermia, bullshit. He was trying to remember what it felt like to be cold without being afraid. Sergeant Voss lasted until 2018. Single gunshot wound to the head. Her note said, it's in the walls. It's always been in the walls. Private Moon disappeared into the Navajo Nation reservation. I tried calling him once. His uncle answered and told me Moon doesn't speak anymore, not in English, not in Navajo, not in any language the elders recognize. That leaves me. I have a photograph here. 15 Marines in full Arctic gear, standing in front of a black building with no windows. We're all smiling, young, confident. We had no idea what we were walking into. 11 of them never came home, not really. Oh, their bodies came back, some of them anyway. But whatever returned in those flag-draped coffins wasn't what went north. This was February 2013, joint operation between the US Navy and DARPA at Research Station Polaris 7, approximately 200 miles north of Alert, Canada. For those who don't know, Alert is the most remote, permanently inhabited place on Earth. And we were 200 miles beyond that, beyond help, beyond rescue, beyond God. They told us we'd be providing security for climate researchers studying ice core samples, standard 6-week rotation, cold weather survival training. Nothing unusual. The briefing took 15 minutes. We'd be supporting civilian scientists, maintaining perimeter security, and ensuring operational continuity in an extreme environment. Questions? No questions. We were Marines. We followed orders. But the equipment they loaded onto the C-130 wasn't for climate research. I watched them bring it on board. Hazmat suits rated for biological warfare, industrial welding torches, portable generators powerful enough to run a small hospital, flamethrowers, and something else. 3 black cases with biometric locks that only Lieutenant Colonel Harding could open. When Corporal Ortiz asked what was in them, Harding just smiled and said, we'd find out if we needed to. I remember the silence of the Arctic. It's not like silence anywhere else. It's not peaceful. It's hostile. Complete. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the sound of blood moving through your veins. When the wind stopped, you could hear the ice groaning beneath your feet, not cracking, groaning, like something huge and ancient shifting in its sleep. And the northern lights. I'd seen them before in Alaska during cold weather training. They're beautiful, ethereal, and natural. What we saw over Polaris 7 wasn't natural. The colors were wrong. Greens that looked diseased, purples that hurt to look at, and they pulsed. Not randomly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. The rookies joked about it. Ortiz said it was like being on an alien planet. He had no idea how right he was. The veterans didn't joke. They watched the sky with the same expression I'd seen on their faces in Fallujah, the look of men who know something is wrong but can't identify the threat. I'm telling you this because 3 days ago, NOAA reported a massive seismic anomaly at the old Polaris 7 coordinates. Same frequency signature we recorded before everything went to hell. The ice is melting faster than any climate model predicted, and I know what's underneath. So if you're listening to this, and you're military or government, you already know what I'm talking about. You know about the black site protocols. You know about the containment failures. You know about the bodies that came back wrong. And if you're not military, if you're just someone who stumbled onto this recording, I'm sorry you have to carry this now too, but someone needs to know, because they're going to send more people north. They always do. And those people deserve to know what's waiting for them. Some of us never came back, but I still hear them every night, scratching at the ice, calling my name, asking why I left them behind. The briefing room at Camp Lejeune smelled like burnt coffee and fear sweat. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that specific frequency that gives you a headache if you sit under it long enough. It was SEER 600 hours, and Lieutenant Colonel Harding stood at the front with a laser pointer and a map of the Arctic Circle projected behind him. Harding was old-school military, mid-50s, crew cut going grey, 3 rows of ribbons on his chest that told you he'd seen some shit. But it was his eyes that got to me. They were the eyes of a man who'd looked into classified darkness and never quite found his way back to the light. When he talked about Polaris 7, he didn't blink. Not once. "Gentlemen and ladies," he said, his voice flat and professional. "You've been selected for a special assignment. Research Station Polaris 7, Canadian Arctic Archipelago. 6-week rotation providing security and logistical support for a DARPA scientific expedition. The mission is classified. The details are need to know. And right now, you don't need to know." Someone in the back, I think it was Private Johansson, raised his hand. "Sir, what kind of research?" Harding's expression didn't change. "Climate science. Ice core analysis. Geological surveys. Standard stuff." There were no other questions. When a lieutenant colonel tells you something is standard, you don't push. Even when every instinct is screaming that nothing about this is standard. Our unit was small. 15 Marines total. We weren't frontline infantry. We were specialists, engineers, communications, medical, security. The kind of team you send when you need people who can think, not just shoot. Corporal Danny Ortiz was our youngest. 22 years old, first deployment outside the continental US. He had this habit of humming, always 80s rock songs, always slightly off-key. Drove Sergeant Voss crazy. Ortiz was optimistic in that dangerous way young Marines are, convinced that bad things happen to other people. He'd grown up in San Diego, never seen real winter. The Arctic was going to eat him alive, and he had no idea. Sergeant First Class Carla Voss was our demolitions expert. 34, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and the kind of skeptical that keeps you alive in combat zones. She had a scar running from her left ear to her collarbone, IED shrapnel from Helmand Province. Voss didn't trust civilians, didn't trust officers, and definitely didn't trust scientists. If someone needs Marines to babysit their science project, she told me during the flight, it's because their science project is dangerous. Private First Class Elias Moon was our radio operator. 26, Navajo, quiet in the way that makes people uncomfortable. His grandfather had been a code talker in World War II, and Moon took communication seriously. He believed in omens, bad signs, the kind of traditional warnings that modern military training doesn't account for. When we were loading gear, he found a raven feather on the tarmac. He pocketed it without saying anything, but I saw his expression. He'd seen something he didn't like. Lieutenant Graves was West Point, 29 years old, desperate to prove himself. This was his first independent command, and you could see the weight of it in the way he checked and rechecked the mission parameters. He was by the book, which meant he wasn't prepared for what happened when the book didn't apply anymore. And then there were the specialists. Private First Class Johansson, combat medic. Corporal Jenkins, engineer. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, weapons specialist. 10 more Marines, whose names I'll carry until I die. Good people, competent, professional. None of them deserved what happened. The flight took 8 hours. C-530 transport, no windows, just the constant roar of engines and the cold seeping in through the hull. We tried to sleep. Most of us couldn't. There's something about flying toward the top of the world that makes sleep impossible. Like your body knows you're leaving the safety of civilization behind. When the loadmaster told us we were 10 minutes out, Ortiz started humming again. The Final Countdown, by Europe. I wanted to tell him to shut up, but the superstitious part of my brain said that would make things worse. We landed hard on an ice runway that was just a flat stretch of frozen ocean. The rear ramp dropped, and the cold hit us like a physical assault. -45 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough that breathing felt like inhaling knives. Cold enough that exposed skin would get frostbite in under 2 minutes. Research Station Polaris 7 sat on the ice like a series of black tumors. 6 modular structures connected by enclosed walkways, all surrounded by a chain-link fence that seemed absurd given the location. What were they keeping out? What were they keeping in? The research team was waiting for us on the ice. 6 men in full hazmat suits, breath condensing inside their face shields. No introductions. No welcome. Just silent observation as we unloaded our gear. One of them stepped forward and extended a hand. "Dr. Kane," he said, "project lead." His grip was ice cold, even through 2 layers of gloves. His eyes were the palest blue I'd ever seen, like ice reflecting sky. "Welcome to Polaris 7. I hope your stay will be educational." Something about the way he said education made my stomach clench. Lieutenant Graves shook his hand with military precision. "Lieutenant Marcus Graves, United States Marine Corps. We're here to support your mission, sir. Whatever you need." Dr. Kane smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, we'll need quite a lot, Lieutenant. Quite a lot indeed." The station interior was sterile and cold. Metal walls, LED lighting, the constant hum of generators. Our quarters were in Module C, 16 bunks in a room designed for 8. No privacy, no personal space, just racks and lockers, and the smell of industrial cleaning solution trying to mask something else, something organic and wrong. The first night we established routines, guard rotations, equipment checks, communications protocols. Moon set up the radio array and immediately ran into problems. "There's interference," he said, adjusting frequencies with growing frustration. Low-frequency hum on every channel, never heard anything like it. Russian subs. Voss suggested, unpacking her demolition kit with practiced efficiency. Moon shook his head. "Wrong signature. This isn't mechanical. It's..." He trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. "It's what?" I asked. He looked at me with those dark, serious eyes. "It sounds biological." Nobody laughed, because in the silence that followed, we all heard it. A low, rhythmic pulse coming through the static, not quite like a heartbeat, not quite like breathing, but close enough to both that your hindbrain recognized it as something alive. Ortiz tried to lighten the mood. Maybe it's whales. I read that whale songs can travel for thousands of miles underwater. "We're on land," Voss said flatly, "and that doesn't sound like any whale I've ever heard." The first meal was freeze-dried rations heated in the mess hall microwave. Dr. Quile. Kane and his team ate separately in Module A, the science wing, which was off-limits to military personnel without escort. When I asked why, Graves just repeated what we'd been told in the briefing. Need to know, Sergeant. We don't need to know, but we did need to know. Because that first night at exactly 0300 hours, the generators flickered. Not dead, flickered. Like something had drawn power for just a moment. And, in that moment of dimness, every Marine in that room sat up in their racks, hands instinctively reaching for weapons. "What was that?" Ortiz whispered. Nobody answered. Because we all knew that when something breaks routine at a black site, it's never good. The ice beneath the station groaned, not the sharp crack of ice breaking. A deep, resonant groan that you felt in your chest more than heard with your ears. Like the planet itself was shifting, or like something buried deep was waking up. Jenkins, who had the first watch, came back from perimeter patrol looking pale. "There are footprints outside the fence," he said. "Human footprints, but they don't lead anywhere. They just start at the fence and disappear 10 feet out." "Probably covered the rest," Graves said, but his voice lacked conviction. "There's no wind tonight, sir," Jenkins replied, "and the prints are fresh. I watched them. They're filled with new snow, like someone walked out there minutes ago and vanished into thin air." We all wanted to believe there was a rational explanation, but none of us did. Because when you're 200 miles north of the most remote inhabited place on Earth, rational explanations start to feel like comfortable lies. The scientists had been drilling for 2 weeks before we arrived. Dr. Comper III. Kane mentioned this casually over breakfast on day 2. "We're at 3,000 meters depth now," he said, pouring powdered creamer into black coffee. "Made an interesting discovery yesterday." "What kind of discovery?" I asked. He smiled that cold smile again. "The kind that changes everything, Sergeant Reeve. The kind that makes you question whether we're really alone in the universe." He stood up, taking his coffee with him. "You'll see soon enough. In fact, I insist. Tomorrow, you'll escort me to the drill site. I want military witnesses to what we found. For the record." He left before I could respond. Voss leaned across the table. "I really don't like that guy," she muttered. "Get in line," I replied. That night at 1,000 hours, the generators flickered again, and this time, through the windows of the mess hall, we saw lights beneath the ice. Not the northern lights. These were underwater, deep down, moving with purpose, pulsing, rising slowly toward the surface. Ortiz pressed his face against the window. "Those look like... Are those jellyfish?" "Jellyfish don't live in Arctic ice," Voss said. "Then what are they?" Nobody had an answer. We just watched as the lights moved beneath us, circling the station like sharks, circling a wounded fish. And when they finally faded back into the depths, none of us could sleep, because we all knew we'd just seen something that shouldn't exist. And tomorrow, we were going down to meet it. Day 4 started like every other day. Cold coffee, freeze-dried eggs, and the feeling that something was watching us through walls we couldn't see. Dr. Kane was waiting for us after breakfast. Sergeant Reeve, Sergeant Voss, suit up. The drill site was 200 meters from the main station, a pressurized tent the size of a basketball court, heated to just above freezing. Inside, a massive drill rig dominated the space, all industrial hydraulics and diamond-tipped bits. The drill hole itself was 12 feet wide, descending straight down into darkness, so complete it seemed to absorb the light. But it was the walls of the hole that stopped us cold. The ice was clear, pristine, impossibly blue, and inside the ice were shadows. Not on the surface. Inside, suspended in the frozen water like insects in amber. Organic shapes, humanoid but wrong. Too many limbs, faces that weren't quite faces, all frozen mid-movement, as if they'd been flash-frozen while trying to claw their way out. "What the hell are those?" Voss breathed. Doctor writhed. Kane approached the edge of the hole with the casual comfort of a man showing off his garden. We're not sure yet. The initial hypothesis was prehistoric fauna, perhaps some unknown species of deep-sea creature pushed up by tectonic activity. But the more we study them, the less sense that makes. He gestured to a technician who brought forward a cylindrical container. Inside was a core sample, 4 feet of crystal-clear ice containing something black and fibrous, like roots or nerves or both. This is from 2,800 meters, Kane continued, his voice taking on a lecturing quality. The ice at that depth is approximately 10,000 years old, end of the last glacial maximum, frozen when mammoths still walked the earth. He tapped the container, but this organic material inside, carbon dating, puts it at less than a week old. I stared at him. That's impossible. Yes, it should be, unless... He paused for effect. Unless it's been in a state of perfect preservation. Suspended animation, not dead, just waiting. Waiting for what? Voss asked, her voice tight. Kane's smile was the coldest thing in that tent. To wake up. The technician placed the container under a microscope. Kane invited me to look. I didn't want to. Every instinct told me to walk away, but I looked anyway. Under magnification, the black fibers were moving. Slowly, deliberately, growing. I watched as a tendril extended by microscopic increments, reaching toward the edge of the ice, toward the warmth of the lab. It's alive, I whispered. Very much so, Kane confirmed. We think it's a form of extremophile fungus, a mycelium network, but unlike any terrestrial organism we've ever encountered, the cell structure is wrong. The DNA, if you can call it DNA, has base pairs that shouldn't exist in nature. This isn't evolution, Sergeant. This is design. Design. Voss's hand had unconsciously moved to her sidearm. You're saying this thing was made? Properly. I'm saying this thing was sent. Kane's eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement, or might have been fear. 10,000 years ago, something fell from the sky and buried itself in the ice. We found impact markers, crystallized minerals consistent with atmospheric entry. Whatever this is, it didn't originate on Earth. And now that the ice is melting, it's waking up. That night, Private First Class Johansson disappeared. He had perimeter patrol from 020 rund to 0400 hours. At 0247, he radioed in his location, Southwest Quadrant, Sector 3, all clear. At 0251, his rifle's emergency beacon activated, indicating he'd dropped or thrown his weapon. At 0253, his personal transponder went offline. We found the rifle in the snow. Still warm. Safety off. 1 round fired into the ice. The bullet embedded deep enough that we couldn't extract it without power tools. No blood. No brass casing. He'd chambered a round, but only fired once. No tracks leading away from the site. Just his boot prints, clear and perfect in the fresh snow, ending abruptly as if he'd stepped off the edge of the world. Wind couldn't have covered this, Jenkins said, examining the scene with his flashlight. These prints are fresh, minutes old, and they just stop. Pairs, thermal imaging and night vision, calling Johansson's name into the darkness. The Arctic swallowed our voices like it was hungry for them. At 0320 hours, Moon radioed from the communications module. Lieutenant, I've got something weird on the motion sensors. Define weird, private. Movement inside the drill hole, sir. Multiple contacts. Ascending. We all looked at each other. The drill hole was 3,000 meters deep. If something was coming up, it had been climbing for hours. Graves made the call. Everyone back to the station, full lockdown protocol. Nobody goes outside without explicit authorization. We scrambled back across the ice. Behind us, I swear I heard something, not voices, but the absence of voices where voices should have been, like a hole in reality shaped like sound. The Moon was still at the radio station when we burst in. I tried to report to command, he said, his face pale in the monitor glow. The transmission's corrupted. Every frequency is layered with that clicking sound. And underneath, I think there's a voice. He played back the recording. Under the static and the clicking was something that might have been words. Might have been screaming. The language sounded ancient and wet, like speaking through a throat full of water. Voss grabbed the headset and tried different frequencies. Same result. "We're cut off," she said flatly. "Whatever's jamming us isn't mechanical, it's adaptive. Every time I switch channels, it follows. Could it be ionospheric interference?" Graves suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Sir, I've operated radios in every shithole from Djibouti to the Hindu Kush," Moon replied. "This isn't interference. This is communication. Something down in that hole is trying to talk to us." At exactly 0300 hours, the generators died, not flickered. Died. Complete power loss. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in red. And through the windows, we saw them. The lights were back. Beneath the ice, dozens of them now. Hundreds. Moving in patterns that weren't random, weren't natural. They were organized, coordinated. And they were coming from the drill site. "Those aren't jellyfish," Ortiz whispered, his face pressed to the glass. "No," I agreed, "they're not." The lights pulsed in rhythm. The same rhythm as clicking on the radio. The same rhythm as the hum in the generators. And watching them move, I realized something that made my blood turn to ice water. They were spreading, branching out from the drill hole in a networked pattern, like roots, like nerves, like a mycelium spreading through the ice beneath our feet. "Dr. Quasars." Kane appeared in the doorway, still fully dressed despite the hour. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "I think you should see this." We followed him to Module A, the science wing, the place we'd been forbidden to enter. He unlocked the door with a biometric scan and led us into a laboratory that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Computer screens covered every wall, displaying data streams I couldn't understand. But I could understand the images. Satellite thermal imaging showing the area around Polaris 7. And spreading out from our location was a heat signature in the shape of a massive web, stretching for miles in every direction beneath the ice. "This is real-time data," Kane explained. "We've been monitoring it for 3 days. The mycelium network is growing exponentially. At current rates, it will cover an area the size of Texas within 2 weeks. And you didn't think to mention this before. We were ordered not to alarm military personnel until we had confirmed data. Now we have confirmed data. The organism is awake, it's growing, and it's intelligent." "How do you know it's intelligent?" I demanded. Kane pulled up another screen. Mathematical patterns, equations, geometric shapes that hurt to look at, because it's solving problems, complex problems, quantum mechanics, through vibration sensors. It responded. "In languages we don't speak. In mathematics we don't understand." "Whatever this thing is, Sergeant, it's not just alive, it's smarter than we are." The implication sat in my stomach like lead. "We need to contact the command. Full evacuation. Nuke this site from orbit if we have to." "We've tried," Kane said quietly. "Communications have been compromised for 36 hours. We're alone up here. Whatever happens next, we're on our own." That's when the screaming started. It came from everywhere and nowhere, not through the walls, through the ice itself. 100 voices screaming in unison, in that same ancient, wet language. And underneath the screaming, words I could almost understand. Words that felt like they were being written directly onto my brain. "We remember. We remember. We remember everything." Ortiz collapsed, hands over his ears, blood streaming from his nose. Jenkins was on the floor, convulsing, and Dr. Renner, one of the scientists, stood perfectly still, Eyes rolled back in his head, whispering the same phrase over and over in a language that predated human civilization. Moon ran for his translation database. When he found a match, his face went white. "It's Proto-Uralic," he said, "spoken 8,000 years ago in Central Asia, before written language, before recorded history." "What's he saying?" Graves demanded. Moon's voice shook. "It remembers us." Dr. Renner didn't stop whispering for 6 hours. We carried him to the medical bay and strapped him down while Johansson, our medic, ran every diagnostic he could think of. Vitals were stable, pupils responsive, no signs of stroke or seizure. But his core body temperature was 94 degrees Fahrenheit, despite the heated building, and his skin was cold to the touch, like he'd been preserved in ice. The whispering never changed in pitch or pace. Just that same phrase repeated like a mantra. "Muistami taidet, muistami kaiken." We remember you. We remember everything. "He's in some kind of fugue state," Johansson said, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "But I don't understand how. There's no head trauma, no toxins in his blood. It's like someone reached into his brain and flipped a switch." "The sound," Moon said quietly. He was monitoring the radio station, headphones around his neck, like he was afraid to put them back on. When the screaming started, the frequency hit a resonance pattern. I watched the oscilloscope. It matched human brainwave patterns, specifically the frequency associated with memory recall. Voss looked up sharply. "You're saying that thing in the ice was broadcasting directly to our brains?" "I'm saying it tried to. Most of us have enough cognitive resistance to shake it off. But Renner," Moon gestured to the catatonic scientist, "something in him was receptive. It found a door into his mind and walked right in." Lieutenant Graves stood in the corner, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. "I want to contact the command. I don't care about radio interference. We have satellite uplinks, emergency beacons. Hell, we have flare guns. Someone needs to know what's happening up here." "I've been trying every system," Moon replied. "The satellite uplink gets a handshake with the relay satellite, starts to transmit, and then cuts out. Same with the emergency beacon. It activates, sends about 3 seconds of data, and then fails. Something is actively blocking us." "Mycelium," Dr. Kane said from the doorway. He looked older than he had yesterday, like the weight of his discovery was aging him in real time. "We think it's learned to generate electromagnetic interference, not randomly, selectively. It's letting signals out long enough to know someone's trying to communicate, then shutting them down. It's toying with us." "A fungus can't do that," Graves said flatly. "A terrestrial fungus can't. This one can. We're not dealing with a simple organism, Lieutenant. We're dealing with something that's had 10,000 years to think, to plan, to wait for the ice to melt enough that it could wake up and remember why it came to Earth in the first place." "And why did it come to Earth?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Kane's expression was haunted. "We don't know. But based on the growth patterns, the behavioral intelligence, and the way it's interfacing with the environment, we think it's terraforming." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. "It's changing the environment to suit itself," Kane continued, "breaking down organic and inorganic matter into usable components, creating a network, a consciousness. We're not dealing with an invasion, gentlemen. We're dealing with the early stages of planetary transformation. Earth doesn't belong to us anymore. It belongs to whatever this thing is, and we just had the bad luck to be here when it woke up." That's when the power went out. Not flickered, not dimmed, went out completely. Even the emergency lights died. Total darkness. The kind of darkness that feels physical, that presses against your eyes like a weight. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. In that darkness, I swear I felt something move through the station, not physically, but like a presence. a consciousness running its fingers along the walls, learning the layout, counting the number of warm bodies inside. Then the emergency generator kicked in, and the red light flooded back. Doctor compressed. Renner was sitting up on the medical bed, restraints still on his wrists, but his head turned at an angle that should have broken his neck. He was staring directly at me, and when he smiled, it wasn't his smile. "Sergeant Reeve," he said in a voice that sounded like his, but wrong, like someone had never heard a human voice before and was trying to approximate it. Michael Patrick Reeve, born September 14, 1985, San Antonio, Texas. Mother, Patricia. Father, James, deceased, 1993. Sister, Christina, married, 2 children. You were afraid of drowning. You dream about your father 3 times a week. You wonder if you're a good man. How? I couldn't finish the question. "We remember," Renner said, his smile widening impossibly. "We touched your mind. Just for a moment. Just long enough to taste who you are. We remember everything we touch, Michael. And we've been touching this world for a very long time." Then he collapsed back onto the bed, eyes rolling back, that horrible whisper starting again. Voss had her sidearm out. "What the fuck was that?" "Contact," Kane breathed, his face ashen. "Direct communication. It's not just intelligent, it's telepathic. It read his mind." "Then it knows everything," Moon said, backing away from Renner like he was radioactive. "Every thought, every memory, every secret." Graves made a decision, lockdown protocol. Nobody leaves their designated area without explicit orders. All hatches sealed. We treat this station like a submarine under attack. And someone get me a working comm channel, or I swear to God I'll walk to alert and deliver the message myself. We scrambled to comply, but I could see it in everyone's faces. The fear, the realization that we weren't security personnel on a scientific mission. We were prisoners in a cage we'd built ourselves. And something was circling outside, learning our patterns, testing our defenses, waiting for the right moment to come inside. At 3000 hours, because of course it was 3000 hours, the temperature inside the station began to rise. Not from the heaters, they were offline, the heat was coming from below, from the ice. Moon checked the external sensors and found the ice temperature around the station was 15 degrees warmer than it should be, and rising. "The mycelium is generating heat," Kine explained, watching the data streams with something between terror and fascination. "Metabolic activity. It's not just growing, it's feeding, breaking down the molecular structure of the ice and converting it to energy." "What's it feeding on?" Jenkins asked. "Everything. Ice, rock, trace minerals. And..." Kane pulled up another screen showing biochemical analysis. "Carbon-based organic material. Anything that was alive, is alive, or can support life." The implications were immediate and horrifying. "Johansson," I said quietly. "Where's Johansson?" We tore through the station. He'd been in Module E, taking inventory of medical supplies. We found the module empty. The door was still locked from the inside. No blood, no signs of struggle. Just an empty room that smelled like sulfur and something else. Something sweet and rotten, like flowers decaying in a tomb. On the floor where he'd been standing was a perfect circle of that black, fibrous growth. And in the center of the circle, embedded in the mycelium like a fossil in stone, was his dog tag. Voss knelt down, reaching for it. I grabbed her wrist. "Don't touch it." "Why not?" "Because I think that's all that's left of him." We stared at the growth. And as we watched, it pulsed. Once, twice, in the rhythm of a human heartbeat. Moon's radio crackled to life. Static, clicking. And then a voice. "It's so cold down here," the voice said. But the words came through backward, like a recording played in reverse and then flipped again. "Why didn't you come for me? I'm still here. I'm still waiting. We're all waiting." Moon ripped the radio off his belt and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered, but the voice continued, now coming from every speaker in the station, the intercoms, the computer terminals, even the medical monitors. We're all waiting, Michael. We remember you. We remember all of you. And we're so hungry. Then silence. Absolute silence. Even the hum of the generators was gone. In that silence, we heard something else. Coming from beneath the floor, from inside the walls, from the spaces between spaces, something was moving through the station's infrastructure. Multiple things. Following the heat signatures. Follow us. Everyone to the mess hall, Graves ordered, his voice cracking slightly. Now. Bring weapons. Bring everything. We barricaded ourselves in the largest room in the station, piling furniture against the doors, checking magazines, pretending the bullets would matter against something that could dissolve a human being and leave only a dog tag behind. Dr. Kane was going through his black case, the one with the biometric lock. Inside were vials of something that glowed faintly blue, syringes, and what looked like a dead man's switch connected to a small metal sphere. "What is that?" I demanded. He looked up at me with eyes that had given up hope. "Insurance policy. If the biological containment fails, if we can't control this device will sterilize a 3-mile radius. Complete molecular breakdown, nothing survives. That's a thermobaric weapon," Voss breathed. "He brought a fucking fuel air bomb to a research station." "We brought a failsafe," Kane corrected. "Because DARPA knew what we might find. They just didn't know if we'd have the courage to use it." "How long have you known?" Graves's voice was dangerous. "How long have you known this thing was dangerous?" "Since we first started drilling. We found the impact site 3 years ago. Satellite thermal imaging showed an anomaly. When we drilled the first core sample and found organic material that shouldn't exist, we knew. We've been studying it ever since. Learning, documenting, trying to understand it before." He trailed off. Before it woke up, I finished. "Yes." The scratching was getting louder. Closer. Something was right beneath us now, moving through the ice like water, flowing around obstacles, learning the layout of our fortress. Moon had managed to salvage his backup radio. He put the headphones on, cycled through frequencies one last time, and then he went rigid. "I've got something," he whispered. "Encrypted military channel. It's a command. They're..." "Oh, God." "What?" Graves grabbed the headphones. He listened for 10 seconds. His face went from relief to horror to fury. When he handed the headphones back to Moon, his hands were shaking. "They knew," he said quietly. "Command knew. This entire mission was a test. We weren't here to provide security. We were here to document the organism's interaction with human subjects. They've been watching us the whole time. Satellite surveillance, monitoring our vitals, recording everything. And they're not sending extraction because they want to see what happens when it breaches containment. They're using us as lab rats," Voss said flatly. "They're using us as data points." Graves pulled out his sidearm and checked the magazine. "Well, fuck their data." "Kane, how do we activate that device?" "It requires a 12-digit code and command authorization. I have the code, but the authorization requires a confirmed order from..." "I don't care about authorization. Can you activate it manually?" Kane looked at the device, then at us. "Yes, but there's a 30-minute countdown. Once initiated, it can't be stopped." "Then we need to go down there," I said, surprised to hear my own voice. "Into the drill hole. We need to see what's at the bottom. We need to understand what this thing wants before we destroy it." Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. "If we're going to die up here," I continued, "if we're going to be the only witnesses to whatever this is, we need to see it with our own eyes, not through a microscope, not through data. We need to look at it directly and know what we're dealing with. Because if that bomb doesn't work, if something survives, Someone needs to know the truth. Voss laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You want to climb down into the mouth of hell because you're curious. I want to climb down there because I'm tired of being afraid of something I don't understand. And because if we don't, Johansson died for nothing. They all died for nothing. Graves considered this for a long moment. Then he nodded. Voss, Moon, you're with me and Reeve. We descended into the drill site. Kane, you stay here with the others. If we're not back in 2 hours, you activate that device. Understood? Kane nodded slowly. Understood. We geared up in the prep room. Arctic survival suits, helmet cams, rappelling equipment, and weapons, though we all knew bullets were psychological comfort more than practical defense. Before we left, I pulled out my phone and recorded a message. Just audio, no video. My hands were shaking too hard to keep the camera steady. This is Staff Sergeant Michael Reeve. If you're hearing this, we didn't make it back. Whatever's down in that ice, it's not natural. It's not an accident. Something sent it here. Something wanted it to wake up. And now it's spreading. Don't try to contain it. Don't try to study it. Just burn it. Burn everything. Burn the ice itself if you have to, because it remembers. And what it remembers, you think anyone will listen? No, I admitted, but I had to try. The walk to the drill site felt like walking to an execution. The storm had picked up, wind screaming across the ice, visibility down to a few feet. But we could see the lights. They were everywhere now, under the ice, in the ice. Rising up like bioluminescent deep-sea creatures swimming through frozen water. The drill tent was exactly as we'd left it, except the hole was different. The ice walls were no longer clear. They were covered in that black mycelium, pulsing with faint light, warm to the touch despite the freezing air. Voss rigged the winch system while Moon and I secured the rappelling lines. Graves stood at the edge of the hole, staring down into the darkness. Last chance to turn back, he said, without looking at us. Nobody turned back. The descent took forever and no time at all. We dropped in stages, using the drill's emergency platforms every 500 meters to rest and check equipment. My helmet light cut through the darkness in a narrow cone, revealing walls that became less ice and more organic the deeper we went. At 1,000 meters, the temperature was somehow warmer. At 2,000 meters, I realized I could see without the light. The mycelium was producing its own illumination, a sickly green phosphorescence that made everything look like it was underwater. At 2,500 meters, the moon stopped descending. "Do you hear that?" he whispered into the comm. We all stopped, and yes, we could hear it. Breathing. Deep, slow, rhythmic breathing that came from everywhere at once. Like the entire cavern was a lung, inhaling and exhaling. "It's the mycelium," Graves said, but his voice shook. "Metabolic gas exchange. Perfectly natural." "Nothing about this is natural," Voss replied. "At 3,000 meters, we reached the bottom. Except it wasn't the bottom. The shaft opened into a cavern so massive, our lights couldn't find the walls. The floor was soft, spongy, covered in that black growth. And standing in the center of the cavern was a structure. It wasn't ice, it wasn't rock. It was something else, smooth, black, geometric but wrong, like someone had built architecture using physics that didn't exist in our universe. The structure was roughly pyramidal, maybe 60 feet tall, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. They shifted and changed, rearranging themselves as we watched. The mycelium wasn't just growing toward the structure, it was growing into it, feeding it. The entire network, spreading across the Arctic ice for miles in every direction, was all connected to this one central point. "What is it?" the moon breathed. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think it's a seed." We approached slowly, weapons raised even though we knew they were useless. The structure was warm. Not hot, but body temperature. Like it was alive. Voss knelt down and examined the mycelium at the structure's base. "There's something here," she said, brushing away the black fibers. "Bones, human bones." We uncovered more. Dozens of skeletons, all arranged in a perfect circle around the structure. They were ancient. The carbon dating would probably put them at 10,000 years old or more. And they weren't random. They were positioned deliberately, hands reaching toward the structure, mouths open like they died in the middle of screaming or praying. The moon found something else. A skull with markings carved into the bone. Not scrimshaw or decoration. Writing, in that same ancient language we'd heard through the radio. He ran it through his translation app. The words came back, we fed it, we gave it everything. And it remembered. "They worshipped this thing," Graves said quietly. "These people found it." Pathic connection. What if it's not just remembering? What if it's controlling? Before anyone could respond, my hand touched the structure. I didn't mean to. I was just steadying myself, and my glove made contact with the smooth black surface for less than a second. But a second was enough. The world exploded into images. I saw Earth from orbit, blue and perfect and pristine. I saw something fall from the stars, burning through the atmosphere, impacting the Arctic ice with enough force to create a crater miles wide. I saw the Ice Age. I saw mammoths and dire wolves and humans in animal skins discovering the crash site. I saw them touch the structure. I saw them scream as it entered their minds. I saw it teach them language, fire, tools, art. Everything that makes humans more than animals, downloaded directly into their primitive brains by something that needed them intelligent enough to serve it. I saw them build the first civilization, not in Mesopotamia, not in Egypt, here. In the Arctic, before the ice fully came, a civilization that worshipped the structure, fed it, gave it offerings of food and blood, and eventually themselves. I saw what it did with those offerings. It consumed them, broke them down to molecular components, stored their memories, their personalities, their souls, if such things exist, in its vast mycelium network. It reminded me of them, all of them, every human who had ever died in service to it. And I saw what it wanted. It was sent here, deliberately. A seed from a species that no longer existed, launched across the galaxy to find worlds with life, to consume that life, to transform entire planets into massive mycelium networks, to remember everything, to archive the universe. Earth was just one of thousands, maybe millions, and we just had the bad luck to let it wake up. When I came back to myself, I was on my knees, blood streaming from my nose, my hands shaking. The others were calling my name, but their voices sounded distant. "It's an archive," I gasped. "A living archive. It consumes civilizations and remembers them forever. That's why it came here. That's what it's been doing for 10,000 years, every time the ice melts enough for it to wake up. It feeds, it remembers, and then it waits for the next cycle." "How many cycles?" Moon asked, his face pale. "I don't know, but I saw memories that weren't mine. I saw people who died thousands of years ago, and they're all still in there, still conscious, still screaming. It doesn't just kill you, it traps you forever." Voss's hands were on her demolition charges. "Then we bury it. Right now. Bring this whole cavern down." "Won't work," Graves said, examining the structure with his flashlight. "Look at the base. It goes deeper. This is just the tip. The main body is probably buried miles down. We'd need a nuclear weapon to destroy it." "Then we use Kane's bomb," I said, climbing to my feet. "We go back, we activate the device, we sterilize everything within 3 miles. It won't destroy it, but maybe it'll slow it down. Maybe it'll buy humanity enough time to figure out how to fight back." That's when we heard the voice. It came from the structure itself, vibrating through the air, resonating in our bones. Not speaking, broadcasting directly into our minds. Michael, Carla, Elias, Marcus, we remember you now. We have tasted your memories, your fears, your love, your regrets. You are already part of us. You always have been. No, I said out loud, backing away. No, we're leaving. We're going back up, and we're ending this. You cannot end what has no end. You cannot kill what is already everything. We are on the ice. We are in the air. We are in your blood. We have been since the moment you arrived. Did you think the cold made you sick? Did you think the fatigue was just exhaustion? Voss looked at her hands. In the green light of the cavern, I could see black threads beneath her skin, so faint you'd miss them unless you knew to look. We all had them. The mycelium had been inside us for days, growing, spreading, learning. We're infected, Moon whispered. We've been infected since we got here. Not infected, integrated. You are becoming part of the network, part of the memory. Soon you will not die. You will be remembered, forever, perfectly. Every moment of your existence is preserved in crystalline clarity for eternity. Is this not what all life wants? To be remembered? I'd rather die forgotten, I said through gritted teeth, than live forever in a fungus. Then die. The mycelium exploded. The floor beneath us erupted in black tendrils, each one moving with horrifying speed and intelligence. They came for us like living whips, wrapping around ankles, wrists, throats. Voss opened fire. Her rifle tore through the mycelium, but it just regrew faster than she could shoot. Moon was pulled off his feet, dragged toward the structure, screaming into his comm. Graves grabbed him, pulled him back, and the mycelium released him so suddenly they both fell backward. It's playing with us, Graves gasped. It's learning how we fight. I pulled out my combat knife and slashed at the tendrils around my leg. The mycelium recoiled from the blade, not from the cut, but from something else. Steel, I shouted. It doesn't like steel. The metal inhibits growth. We formed a circle, backs together, blades out. The mycelium circled us but didn't attack. Instead, the temperature dropped, fast. From above, freezing to well below in seconds. Our breath came out in white clouds. Ice formed on our suits, and then they appeared, figures emerging from the walls, translucent, shifting, bioluminescent. Humanoid shapes that moved like stop-motion animation, jerking and gliding simultaneously. They had faces, dozens of faces superimposed on each other, flickering between different people, different expressions, different time periods. The memories, Moon breathed. It's projecting the memories. One of the figures approached me. Its face shifted through 100 different people before settling on one. My father, dead 30 years. He smiled at me with my father's smile, but his eyes were wrong, too bright, too aware. Michael, he said in my father's voice, it's not so bad being remembered. I'm still here. I've always been here, waiting for you. You're not my father, I said, raising my weapon. I'm everyone's father, everyone's son. Everyone who ever died and fed the network. We're all here, forever. And soon you will be too. Voss fired. The bullet passed through the figure like it was smoke. More figures emerged. Hundreds of them, thousands, filling the cavern, all wearing faces we recognized. Johansson, Renner, Jenkins. People who'd disappeared, people who'd died, all smiling those two bright smiles. We need to move, Graves ordered. Back to the shaft, now. We ran. The figures didn't chase. They just watched, waited, knowing that we were already caught, that the mycelium in our blood was already growing, already connecting us to the network. We reached the rappelling lines and started climbing. Below us, the structure pulsed with light. The breathing sound grew louder, faster, like it was exciting. At 2,000 meters, the moon's line snapped. Not broke, snapped. Like something cut it. He fell 10 feet before catching another platform, the impact knocking the wind out of him. "It's in the equipment," he gasped. "It's been growing through the lines, weakening them." We climbed faster, hand over hand, not trusting the mechanical winch, not trusting anything. Behind us, the green light grew brighter. The network was following us up. At 1,000 meters, we heard the explosion. Voss had dropped her demolition charges before we ran. Set to remote detonation, she triggered them now, and the cavern below erupted in fire and thunder. Rocks fell, ice cracked, and for a moment, just a moment, the green light dimmed. Then it came back, brighter than before, angrier. The mycelium surged up the shaft like a tidal wave. We climbed. We climbed like our lives depended on it, because they did. I could feel it catching up. Cold black tendrils brushing against my boots, wrapping around my ankles. The moon was screaming, Voss was cursing, Graves was praying, and I was climbing. We burst out of the drill hole into the tent, cutting the lines behind us, watching as the mycelium poured out after us like oil. It spread across the floor, up the walls. The entire structure was being consumed. "The station," Graves shouted. "Get to the station. Kane needs to activate the bomb." We ran through the Arctic night. The storm had become a blizzard. Visibility was zero. But we didn't need visibility. We just needed to move. Behind us, the drill tent collapsed as the mycelium consumed its supports. We burst into the main station airlock, sealed it behind us, and found chaos. The others were barricaded in the mess hall. The station was overrun. The mycelium had come up through the floors, through the ventilation, through every crack and seam. It covered the walls like black ice, and walking through it were the figures, dozens of them, wearing the faces of everyone who'd ever died at Polaris 7. Dr. Kompolis. Kane was standing in the center of the mess hall, the thermobaric device in his hands, his finger on the activation trigger. "It's too late," he said calmly. "It's in all of us, in the air, in the water. We're already part of it. The only question is whether we take it with us." "Then take it with us," I said. "Blow this place to hell." Kane looked at me. For a moment, I saw real human emotion in his eyes. Regret, fear, relief. Then he nodded. 30-minute countdown, he said. "Start now." He pressed the button. The device beeped once. A red light began blinking. 30 minutes until sterilization. The mycelium went insane. It came through the walls like water breaching a dam. The figures rushed forward, not attacking, pleading, begging, trying to stop us from destroying the network, from destroying 10,000 years of memories. "Please," the voices said in unison. "We are all that remains of humanity's first civilization. We are history itself. You would destroy everything we've learned, everything we've become. Please." "You're not history," I said, backing toward the emergency exit. "You're a parasite wearing history's face." Graves pulled out his sidearm and shot Dr. Kane. The bullet hit him in the chest. He stumbled back, hit the wall, slid down. The device fell from his hands, still counting down, still active. "Why?" Kane gasped, blood spreading across his shirt. "Because you were going to deactivate it," Graves said coldly. "I saw it in your eyes. You were going to save the specimen, save the data. You were going to let it win." "I'm a scientist," Kane whispered. "This is the discovery of the millennium, of human history. We can't just destroy it." "Watch us," Voss said. She grabbed the device, stuffed it in her pack, and headed for the door. We ran. Again. Always running. Through corridors that were more mycelium than metal. Past rooms where the black growth had consumed everything. Past windows showing the ice outside, lighting up with bioluminescent patterns that looked almost like writing. The bomb had 25 minutes left when we reached the vehicle bay. One snowcat remained operational. We piled in. Moon took the driver's seat and gunned the engine. The station disappeared behind us in the blizzard. We drove blind, following GPS coordinates, following hope, following the desperate prayer that we'd get far enough away to survive the blast. 20 minutes. The snowcat's engine was straining. We were pushing it harder than it was designed for. Behind us, through the rear window, I could see lights, green lights, spreading across the ice. Follow us. 15 minutes. The snowcat hit something, a pressure ridge, a hidden crevasse. We didn't know. The vehicle lurched, slid sideways, and stopped. The engine died. No, Moon said, turning the key. Nothing. No, 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 come on. Foss was already out, popping the hood. Mycelium in the fuel line. It's everywhere. The whole system is clogged. 10 minutes. We looked at each other. The math was simple. The bomb had a 3-mile kill radius. We were maybe 2 miles from the station. Not far enough. We walk, Graves said. We walk until we can't walk anymore. We were exhausted, frozen, infected. The mycelium was visible now beneath our skin, black threads spreading like cracks in ice. But we walked. 3 minutes. In the distance we saw lights, not green, white. Helicopter searchlights cutting through the storm. They're coming, Moon gasped. Command is finally coming. 2 minutes. The helicopters were getting closer. Black shapes against the white sky, unmarked, no rescue call, no friendly chatter on the radio. 1 minute. I realized the truth at the last minute. They weren't coming to rescue us. They were coming to retrieve the data, to study what happened, to preserve the specimen if possible. We were never going to make it home. 30 seconds. I stopped walking, turned around. The station was visible in the distance, glowing green, beautiful and terrible. 10 seconds. I closed my eyes, thought about my sister, my mother, the life I'd never get to live. 3, 2, 1. The world turned white. I woke up in a hospital bed. Not a normal hospital. No windows, no identifying marks. Just white walls, white sheets, white lights that never turned off. An IV in my arm pumping something into my bloodstream. Monitors tracking my vitals. And a camera in the corner, red light blinking, always watching. I tried to sit up. Restraints held me down. Soft restraints, medical grade, but restraints nonetheless. A man in a navy uniform entered. Captain's bars, no name tag. He pulled up a chair and sat down, regarding me with the expression of someone examining an interesting specimen. Staff Sergeant Reeve, he said. Welcome back. You've been unconscious for 6 days. The others. My voice was raw, like I'd been screaming. Sergeant Voss is 2 rooms down. Private Moon is in psychological observation. Lieutenant Graves. He paused. Lieutenant Graves didn't make it. The blast injuries were too severe. I closed my eyes. Another name on the list of the dead. What happened to the station? Research Station Polaris 7 was destroyed in an accidental methane explosion caused by drilling into a previously unknown gas pocket. A tragedy. 11 Marines and 6 civilian scientists died in the line of duty. Their families have been notified. Closed casket funerals, full honors. That's not what happened. That's the official report. He leaned forward. Now, let me explain what happens next. You're going to recover. We're going to run some tests, purely medical, routine. And then you're going to sign some paperwork, non-disclosure agreement. National security. You'll receive an honorable discharge and a settlement, enough money to start over, to forget. I'm not going to forget. Yes, you will, one way or another. He stood up. Think about your family, Sergeant, your mother, your sister, her children. Think about how much better their lives will be if you take the money and keep your mouth shut. He left. He left. I spent the next 14 days in that white room, being interrogated by men in suits who all asked the same questions in slightly different ways. What did you see? What did you touch? Do you remember the symbols? Did it speak to you? Did you speak to it? I told them everything, every detail, every horror. They wrote it all down. I recorded it, catalogued it. And then they brought out the papers. I signed. What choice did I have? Fight, and my family suffers. Fight, and I disappear into a black site prison for the rest of my life. Sign, and at least I get to go home, even if home would never feel like home again. They released me with 200,000, a medical discharge for cold weather injuries, and a prescription for enough antipsychotics to kill an elephant. The money went into a bank account I never touched, the pills went down the sink, and I tried to rebuild a life from the smoking ruins of the person I used to be. I attended the funeral. Ortiz, Jenkins, Rodriguez, all the others. Closed caskets, just like they said, flag-draped coffins containing God knows what. Ortiz's mother thanked me for bringing her son home. I wanted to tell her the truth, wanted to scream that her son was consumed by a prehistoric alien fungus and his consciousness might still be trapped in a network beneath the Arctic ice. But I just nodded and accepted her gratitude like the coward I was. Voss lasted 3 years. She tried to adjust, got a job, an apartment, a routine, but I'd see her sometimes at the VA, and I'd recognize the look in her eyes. The same look I saw in my own mirror every morning, the look of someone who knows too much, seen too much, been touched by something that refuses to let go. They found her in her apartment in 2018, single gunshot wound to the head. Her note was 4 words, "It's in the walls." The moon disappeared into the Navajo Nation. I tried calling him once. His uncle answered, told me Moon didn't speak anymore. Said he spends his days drawing symbols in the sand. The same symbols we saw in the cavern, over and over, like he's trying to remember something, or trying to warn us. I tried to move on. I really did. Got a job as a security consultant, met a woman, got married, pretended that everything was normal. But the nightmares never stopped. And the symptoms started appearing around year 5. Black threads under my skin, so faint most people wouldn't notice. But I noticed. I went to the doctors. They said it was just veins, perfectly normal, but I knew better. The mycelium was still growing. Slowly, patiently, waiting. I started monitoring the news. Reports of unusual seismic activity in the Arctic, unexplained illnesses among researchers studying permafrost samples, strange fungal growths found in Siberia, Greenland, Alaska, always near ancient ice, always spreading. And then last month, I saw the satellite images. NOAA had detected massive thermal activity at the Polaris 7 coordinates. The ice was melting. Fast. Faster than any climate model could explain. I accessed old DARPA files through contacts I probably shouldn't have. The blast hadn't destroyed the structure. It had damaged it, sure, slowed its growth. But the main body was buried too deep, protected by miles of ice. And now that ice was melting. 3 weeks ago, Norway sent a research team to investigate the thermal anomaly. They found the crater, they found the structure, and they started drilling. I tried to warn them. Tried to contact the Norwegian government, the UN, anyone who would listen. They called me a conspiracy theorist, said I was suffering from PTSD, threatened legal action if I kept spreading misinformation. 2 weeks ago, the Norwegian research team stopped reporting. Satellite imaging shows their camp is still there, but nobody's moving, nobody's responding to hails. And the thermal signature is spreading. 1 week ago, I saw Ortiz, not a hallucination, not a dream. I saw him in my bathroom mirror while I was brushing my teeth. He was standing behind me, smiling. His face was wrong, too many features layered on top of each other. But it was him. "Hey, Reeve," he said in that voice I'd tried so hard to forget. "Long time no see. We've been waiting for you. We've always been waiting. And soon you'll understand. Soon you'll remember everything." I spun around, nobody there, but on the mirror, written in the condensation, were words in that ancient language. I looked them up. They translated to, "The ice remembers." That's when I decided to make this recording. I'm in a motel room in Montana, off the grid, no digital trail, paid cash, fake name. I've been moving every few days for the last 2 weeks, not running from the government, running from something else, something that's in my blood, in my dreams. In every shadow and reflection, the mycelium has spread through my entire lymphatic system now. I can see it clearly under my skin, black networks following my veins. It doesn't hurt. That's the worst part. It doesn't hurt at all. Sometimes I can feel it, thinking, like there's something else sharing my brain, something ancient, patient, curious. It shows me things, memories that aren't mine. I saw the Arctic 10,000 years ago. I see the first humans discovering the structure. I see civilizations rise and fall, all feeding the network, all becoming part of the eternal memory. I see other worlds, other species, other planets were consumed and archived, and I see the future. I see the Arctic ice gone. The structure is fully exposed. The mycelium spreads across the northern hemisphere, cities overtaken, forests transformed, oceans seeded, humanity integrated into the network, not killed, remembered perfectly forever. Part of me, and I hate this part of me understands the appeal, never dying, never being forgotten. Every moment of your existence is preserved for eternity. What is that, if not immortality? But it's not immortality, it's a prison. A beautiful, terrible prison where you're aware forever, but never free. I'm recording this because someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand what's coming. The governments know. The military knows. They've been studying it for years, probably trying to weaponize it. Probably failing to understand that you can't control something that's been planning its return for 10,000 years. They'll cover it up, call it climate change, natural phenomena, ecological disaster. They'll evacuate populations and establish quarantine zones and pretend they have control. But they don't. Nobody does. If you're listening to this, you need to understand something. Mycelium isn't evil. It doesn't hate us, it's just doing what it was designed to do, remember? Archive, preserve, it's a library of extinct civilizations, and we're just the next volume. So what do you do? How do you fight something that's in the air, the water, the ice itself? How do you kill something that's already in your blood? You can't. That's the truth I've learned. You can't fight it, you can only witness it, and bear testimony to what humanity was before we became part of something larger. My hands are shaking. I don't have much time. I can feel it calling me north. Back to the ice. Back to the structure. It wants me to come home, to complete the integration, to join the eternal memory. Part of me wants to go. The human part that's tired of fighting, tired of running, tired of being afraid. But the marine part, the part that watched 11 good people die, that part says no. That part says fight. Even if fighting is futile, even if resistance only delays the inevitable. So I'm going to upload this recording, send it to every media outlet I can find, post it on every forum, email it to every journalist. Most will ignore it. Some will call me crazy. Some will call it fiction. Good. Maybe fiction is safer than truth, but someone will listen. Someone always does. And maybe that someone will be in a position to do what we couldn't. Maybe they'll find a way to stop it, or at least slow it down. Buy humanity enough time to evacuate, to adapt, to survive. I don't know. I'm just one man. One infected, dying, terrified man trying to leave something behind. Trying to be remembered for the right reasons, instead of becoming another face in the network's endless gallery of the consumed. The mycelium is beautiful in its own way. I can admit that now. The way it connects everything. the way it preserves, the way it transforms death into eternal existence. If you don't think about the consciousness trapped inside, if you don't think about the screaming that never ends, I can hear them now. All of them. Ortiz, Voss, Graves, Johansson, Jenkins, all the Marines who died at Polaris 7, they're calling my name, telling me to come home, telling me that it's not so bad, that they're still themselves, still aware, still alive in a way. But I also hear the others, the thousands of voices from 10,000 years of consumption, the ancient humans who first discovered the structure, the civilizations that rose and fell feeding it, the researchers who drilled too deep, the soldiers sent to contain it. All of them were screaming, all of them begging, all of them warn, don't let it touch you, don't let it in, run, fight, die free rather than live forever in chains. I have a gun, one bullet, I could end this now, die human, die free, deny the network one more consciousness, one more memory, one more trophy. But if I die, who tells the story? Who warns the next team they send north? Who bears witness? So I'm going to finish this recording, upload it, and then I'm going to make a choice. The hardest choice of my life. I'm going back to the Arctic, back to Polaris 7. Not because the mycelium is calling me, but because I need to see it again. Document it properly this time. Get video evidence. Proof that can't be dismissed as the ravings of a traumatized soldier. Proof that will force the world to acknowledge what's coming. If I don't come back, and I won't come back, then this recording is my testimony, my confession, my warning. To the families of the men and women who died at Research Station Polaris 7, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we couldn't save them. I'm sorry we couldn't bring them home. I'm sorry their names will be buried under classification and lies. But know this, they died fighting. They died protecting humanity from something we didn't understand. They died heroes, even if the world will never know it. To the military personnel who will eventually be sent north to investigate, don't go. I know you will anyway. Orders are orders. But when you get there, when you see the green lights beneath the ice, when you hear the voices calling your name, don't listen. Don't touch the structure. Don't let it into your mind. And for God's sake, don't let anyone convince you that it can be contained, studied, or controlled. The only rational response to this organism is complete eradication. Nuclear fire. Nothing less will suffice. To the scientists who think this is the discovery of the millennium, you're right, it is. It's also the end of the millennium. Maybe the end of humanity as we know it. Knowledge isn't always worth the price. Some doors should stay closed. Some questions should never be answered. This is one of them. And to anyone listening to this who thinks I'm insane, who thinks this is just a scary story, who thinks nothing like this could ever really happen, I hope you're right. I hope this is just the paranoid delusion of a traumatized soldier. I hope the nightmares are just nightmares. I hope the black threads under my skin are just veins. But I know better. I've seen it, touched it. I was touched by it. And I know that right now, as you listen to this, it's spreading. Slowly, patiently, growing through the thawing permafrost. Learning about our world, planning its transformation. Waiting for the moment when it has enough mass, enough connection, enough power to emerge fully and complete what it started 10,000 years ago. The ice remembers, and what it remembers is how to end worlds. My name is Staff Sergeant Michael Reeve. Serial number, it doesn't matter anymore. If you're hearing this, I'm either dead or I'm part of something that should never have existed. Either way, the man I was is gone. But the warning remains.